performance in Game 2 of the first round matchup with the Aces in the Sky. And we also covered an exciting Game 2 matchup between Minnesota and Connecticut, and why I'm sticking with my pick of Minnesota winning Game 3. But with this last segment, guys, I want to talk about the comparison between Bruce Lee and Steph Curry. And I know reading, and before I get into it, be sure to hit the subscribe and like button as well. Stay up to date on our latest content. But you know, people see this tagline and they think to yourself, Bruce Lee, Steph Curry, like what can these two possibly have in common? What's the point of all this? And just like everything we do on this show, it's done with intentionality and it's done with purpose. And the reason I want to talk about the comparison between these two players, these two athletes, these two men, is because of their approach and their mindset when it comes to performances. You know, I was listening to a Steph Curry interview that was done about, I want to say the interview was done in 2017, so about 6 years ago actually. And Steph Curry talked about how before each game, you know, he gets nervous, extremely nervous, but what he does to counteract those nerves and to ground himself and center himself is he puts things into perspective, and he minimizes the gravitas of the moment by telling himself it's just a game, it's just basketball, it's not the end of the world, that, you know, there's bigger factors going on in the world than just basketball, that this performance doesn't define you and it doesn't dictate who you are as an individual. So he has that approach of, when it comes to grounding himself and being mentally ready to go into these matchups, into his games. And I was listening to that, and it sounded eerily similar to a thought process that Bruce Lee would have. Because I remember listening to a clip of Bruce Lee speaking. He talked about he liked to use the concept of being like water in terms of having that mindset and being free flowing from state to state, and how when he would come into a match or into you know, shooting for a movie or like I said, a sparring match or whatever, he would have that same approach where he would minimize the importance and the gravitas of that moment, of that match, of that filming, and remind himself that there's much more to life, to this world, to his purpose than just this moment, than this sparring match right here. And Bruce Lee said by him putting himself in that mindset, it took pressure off of him and allowed him to perform better in his matches, in his battles, and in his filming. And Steph Curry has that same approach as well. By, you know, that having that approach takes pressure off of you, and it allows you to be more fluid and be more relaxed when you go out into the game, and you realize that it's not the end of the world. Whatever happens. And having that sort of approach, it allows you to be less stiff, and it allows you to just go out there and play with fluidity and with a sense of relaxation. And that's where the concept of being like water comes from, where, you know, water can come in different states. It can come in a gas, a liquid, or a solid state. But no matter what physical state that the water's in, at its core, it's still H2O. At its core, its essence is still the same, no matter the physical state. And so being able to adapt and being able to be malleable to the conditions that you're in, and that's what it means to be like water. And, you know, being free flowing down a river, being able to flow and move despite the conditions, despite what obstacles may be in that river. You know, being able to adjust from the solid to the gas to the liquid, being malleable, knowing at your core is still H2O. You're still H2O. Your core, your inner core is still the same, but being malleable, being able to adjust based on the conditions that you're in. And that's what it means to be like water. And that's how Bruce Lee and Steph Curry, they have that commonality when it comes to that thought process. And it's no question that that thought process is what propels them to success. Being able to be malleable and adjustable to the conditions that they're in, but knowing at their core they're free flowing, they're relaxed, they're much more than just, you know, an actor or a martial artist or a basketball player. You know, their performance isn't going to define them for the rest of their life. And that ability to ground yourself is so important when it comes to athletes, and when it comes to anyone in life in general. You know, being able to keep things in the proper perspective. And I just found it so interesting that it was Steph Curry, you know, said something that was eerily similar to how Bruce Lee said something, and it's interesting how their viewpoints were very much in common. And there's no question in my mind now that anyone that is successful in life has to have that sort of approach, and it has to have that ability to be malleable and to that ability to ground themselves in that moment, in those moments of pressurized situations. And once you can, and there's an old proverb as well that says, there is no enemy outside when there's no longer an enemy within. And you know, it's just like that. Once you can master your inner self, once you can master your inner thoughts and your emotions, and not allowing your emotions to control you and to lead you, but allowing your mental to be the strongest suit about you, then there is no outside circumstances that can, you know, quote unquote, break you or can or defeat you. And it's very true. You know, whether it be in regular your personal life or whether it be in athletics or in any capacity, you know, once there's no longer an enemy within, there's no longer an enemy outside. And that's something to remember moving forward. But Bruce Lee and Stephen Curry, it's no mistake that these two guys, who are both extremely successful in their craft, have the same mindset when it comes to being like water and you know, rationalizing things and being grounded in the moment when it comes to pressurized situations, and taking pressure on themselves by understanding that, you know, this performance is not going to define them, and this moment isn't as big as they think it is. And that's something that we can all take from Bruce Lee and Steph Curry, is that mindset. But guys, that is all we have for our show today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, be sure to click that like button, click that subscribe button as well, so you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. Be sure to subscribe to us on Patreon as well. You can do so by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in GSMCSportsNetwork.com, so you can get access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily. And if you'd like to support our company and our network, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Once again, it's streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. None of this is possible without you guys, the fans, so we're so grateful for all the love and support that you show us, and it's an honor to share my insight and my knowledge on the world of basketball with you guys. I know we do things from a little bit a different perspective, but I appreciate you guys listening and, you know, having the bandwidth to look at basketball from a more introspective perspective. But if you haven't already, be sure to tune into the GSMC Baseball Podcast, GSMC College Football Podcast, the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, and the GSMC NFL Podcast as well. All of our hosts provide great insight, and they're some of the best in the business. So they all do amazing work. But we'll be back again same time tomorrow, guys, 5:30 Eastern Time. Continue to stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions, and until next time, guys, peace.